Hey there, how's it going? Thanks for joining me today. Whether you're relaxing at home, on your commute, or winding down for the evening, I'm really glad you're here. Picture this. You're standing in a tropical paradise. Palm trees sway gently in the warm breeze around you. The temperature is a perfect 77 degrees. Rivers flow through lush valleys, and massive fern forests stretch as far as your eye can see. Birds call from the canopy above, and somewhere in the distance, you can hear the gentle sound of waves lapping against a shoreline. This sounds like Hawaii, right? Maybe Costa Rica? Well, here's the thing that's going to blow your mind. You're standing in Antarctica. Not the Antarctica you know today, with its endless ice sheets and bone-chilling temperatures. I'm talking about Antarctica 300 million years ago. And trust me, this isn't just some wild theory. This is real. This happened. Before we continue this journey, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story resonates with you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow I've saved something extraordinary for you. Now I know what you're thinking. 300 million years? That's so long ago it might as well be fiction. But here's what's incredible about that time frame. It gives us something that most people never think about. Time. Massive, almost incomprehensible amounts of time. While we're used to thinking about human civilization in terms of thousands of years, we're talking about a span that makes the entire history of humanity look like the blink of an eye. Let me put this in perspective for you. If the entire history of Earth was compressed into a single 24-hour day, human civilization, everything from the pyramids to the internet, would occupy the last few seconds before midnight. But this tropical Antarctica I'm describing, that would be happening around 6 in the evening. We're talking about a completely different world. 300 million years ago, Earth looked nothing like it does today. All the continents were smooshed together into one massive supercontinent called Pangaea. Imagine taking all of today's land masses, North America, South America, Europe, Africa, Asia, Australia, and pushing them together like puzzle pieces. That's Pangaea. And right there, at a crucial position within this supercontinent, sat Antarctica. But here's where it gets really interesting. Antarctica wasn't just another piece of tropical real estate. Its location created something unique, something that doesn't exist anywhere else on Earth today. You see, when you're positioned at the South Pole, you're sitting at a convergence point for the planet's electromagnetic fields. Think of Earth like a giant magnet with invisible lines of force flowing from pole to pole. At the South Pole, these energy fields create natural electromagnetic vortexes. Now I want you to think about what this means. We're not just talking about a warm climate. We're talking about a place where the very energy of the planet converged, where natural forces combined in ways that don't happen anywhere else. And this wasn't a brief moment in geological time. This lasted for hundreds of millions of years. The vegetation that grew in this prehistoric Antarctica was unlike anything we see today. These weren't the small ferns you might find in your garden. We're talking about tree ferns that towered hundreds of feet into the air. Forests so dense and vast that they covered millions of square miles. The amount of oxygen in the atmosphere was different too, much higher than today, which allowed for plant and animal life on scales we can barely imagine. Rivers carved through valleys where ice sheets now rest 2 miles thick. Let that sink in for a moment. 2 miles. If you were to stack up every skyscraper in Manhattan on top of each other, you still wouldn't reach the surface of the ice that now covers what used to be flowing rivers and tropical valleys. But here's what really gets me excited about this story. While all this was happening, while Antarctica was this tropical paradise with perfect conditions, continental drift was beginning its slow dance. You see, Pangaea wasn't going to stay together forever. The same forces that had pushed all the continents together were now starting to pull them apart, and Antarctica was about to begin one of the most incredible journeys in Earth's history. Over the course of millions of years, it would slowly migrate from its position within Pangaea all the way down to the bottom of the world. Think about that for a second. An entire continent gradually moving thousands of miles. and carrying with it whatever had developed during those hundreds of millions of years of perfect conditions. This journey wasn't quick by human standards. We're talking about movement measured in inches per year. But in geological time, it was like watching a massive slow-motion movie. Antarctica drifted south, slowly leaving behind the warm currents and temperate climate that had nurtured it for so long. As it moved toward the South Pole, everything changed. The warm ocean currents that had kept it tropical were cut off. The angle of sunlight changed dramatically, and eventually the ice began to form. First just seasonal ice, then permanent ice, then massive ice sheets that grew thicker and thicker until they reached the 2-mile depths we see today. But here's the crucial part of this story, and this is where things get really fascinating. Before the ice came, before the darkness of endless Antarctic winter, there was time. Hundreds of millions of years of time. Perfect conditions, abundant resources, complete isolation from the rest of the world as Pangaea broke apart. Think about what that means. If you were designing the perfect laboratory for evolution, the perfect conditions for something to develop without interference, you couldn't do much better than prehistoric Antarctica. Warm climate? Check. Abundant energy sources from geothermal activity? Check. Rich vegetation to support complex food chains? Check. And most importantly, isolation, complete separation from predators or competitors that might have evolved elsewhere. Now, I'm not saying anything definitive here. I'm just asking you to consider the possibilities. We know that life finds a way to develop in the most extreme conditions. We've found organisms thriving in volcanic vents, at the bottom of the ocean, in frozen lakes, in caves that haven't seen sunlight for millions of years. Life is incredibly adaptable and persistent. So what might have had the chance to develop in Antarctica during those hundreds of millions of years of perfect conditions? What could have evolved with all that time, all those resources and complete isolation from the rest of the world? The ice that eventually covered Antarctica didn't just bury the continent, it preserved it. When something gets frozen and stays frozen for millions of years, it doesn't decay. It doesn't erode away. It just sits there waiting. Like a time capsule the size of a continent. Every year, our technology gets better at seeing through that ice. Satellite imagery, ground-penetrating radar, magnetic sensors. We're developing tools that can peer through miles of frozen water to see what lies beneath. And what we're starting to find, well, that's where this story gets really interesting. You see, the Antarctica we know today, the frozen wasteland at the bottom of the world, might be hiding the greatest secret in human history. Not just fossils of ancient plants and animals, but evidence of something that challenges everything we think we know about the development of intelligence on Earth. I'm talking about structures under that ice, geometric patterns that nature doesn't create, magnetic anomalies that suggest technology we don't understand. And maps, ancient maps created hundreds of years ago, that show Antarctica's coastline in perfect detail long before anyone was supposed to have discovered the continent. But I'm getting ahead of myself. That's what we're going to explore in the days ahead. For now, I just want you to hold on to this image. Antarctica as a tropical paradise, blessed with perfect conditions and isolated from the rest of the world for hundreds of millions of years. A place where evolution could have taken paths we've never imagined. Because what happened next, what we're discovering buried under, all that ice is going to change. Everything we think we know about intelligence, about civilization, and about our place in the history of this planet. Tomorrow, we're going to dive into some discoveries that shouldn't exist. Findings that have made seasoned scientists question their fundamental assumptions about the past. We're talking about perfect geometric shapes detected under miles of ice, ancient maps that show impossible knowledge, and research teams whose discoveries were immediately classified. Trust me, you're not going to want to miss what comes next. The evidence we're about to explore will make you see our world and our place in it in a completely different way. Until tomorrow. Keep wondering, keep questioning, and remember, the most incredible discoveries often come from the most unexpected places. And sometimes the most unexpected place is right here on Earth, buried under the ice at the bottom of the world. Hey there! Welcome back. I hope yesterday got you thinking about what might be possible when you have 300 million years of perfect conditions. Because today, we're diving into discoveries that are going to challenge everything you think you know about what's buried under Antarctic ice. Let me start with something that happened in 1999 that still gives me chills every time I think about it. A joint Russian-British research team was conducting routine surveys of the ice sheet when their instruments detected something that absolutely should not exist. Picture this. They're using sophisticated magnetometers and ground-penetrating radar, expecting to map the usual geological features. Rock formations, maybe some mineral deposits, standard stuff, but then their readings went completely haywire. Not from metal deposits, which would be weird enough under 2.5 miles of ice. No, this was something else entirely. Something that was reorganizing the Earth's magnetic field in patterns that nature simply doesn't create. What they found was a perfect rectangle. And when I say perfect, I mean mathematically precise. 70 miles long and 30 miles wide, buried beneath 2.3 miles of solid ice. Let me put that in perspective for you. That's bigger than the entire state of Rhode Island. This thing is massive, it's geometric, and it's been sitting under the ice, undisturbed, for who knows how long. They called it the Lake Vostok Magnetic Anomaly, and it was just the beginning. Because once you start looking for things that shouldn't exist under Antarctic ice, you start finding them everywhere. But here's what really gets me excited about this story. It actually starts much, much earlier. We're talking about clues that have been hiding in plain sight for over 500 years. In 1513, a Turkish admiral named Piri Reis created a map that should be impossible. This map showed Antarctica's coastline in perfect detail, 300 years before the continent was officially discovered by anyone in the modern world. Think about that for a second. How do you accurately map a continent that supposedly nobody knew existed? But it gets even more incredible. The Piri Reis map doesn't just show Antarctica as a big blob of land at the bottom of the world. It shows the actual coastline of the continent, the coastline that's currently buried under miles of ice. It shows mountain ranges that we've only discovered in the last few decades using satellite technology. It shows rivers that haven't flowed for millions of years. Where did this impossible knowledge come from? Piri Reis himself wrote notes on his map, explaining that he compiled it from over 20 source maps, some of which dated back to the time of Alexander the Great. He claimed these ancient sources had geographical knowledge that even he couldn't fully understand. Then, in 1531, another mapmaker named Orontius Phineus created an even more detailed map of Antarctica. This one showed the continent almost exactly as it would appear if you could somehow remove all the ice and look at the actual landmass underneath. The proportions are correct. The mountain ranges are in the right places. Even the rivers are accurately mapped. Now you might be thinking, okay, maybe these old mapmakers just got lucky. Maybe they made some educated guesses. But here's the thing. Modern satellites equipped with ice-penetrating radar have confirmed that these ancient maps are startlingly accurate. We're talking about knowledge that we've only been able to verify in the last 20 or 30 years, appearing on maps that are 500 years old. But the really mind-blowing stuff started happening when we developed the technology to see through miles of ice in real time. In 2012, a British Antarctic survey team was using advanced ground-penetrating radar when they discovered what appeared to be massive tunnel systems running beneath the ice sheet. These weren't natural caves or ice formations. The walls of these tunnels showed signs of something called vitrification. That's when extreme heat essentially melts rock or other materials and turns them into a glass-like surface. Nature doesn't build glass tunnels. The temperature required to vitrify rock is around 3,000 degrees Fahrenheit. You need serious technology to generate that kind of heat consistently over long distances. The British team's findings were classified immediately. And I mean immediately. The research was supposed to be published in several geological journals. Press releases were written. Then everything just disappeared into classified archives. The team members suddenly found themselves bound by national security agreements. But you can't classify satellite data forever. And the satellites keep finding more anomalies. There are perfectly straight lines that run for hundreds of miles under the ice. Not rivers, not geological fault lines, perfectly straight lines with geometric precision. There are circular formations that show up on magnetic resonance imaging as having a completely different density than the surrounding ice and rock. There are structures that appear to be built on mathematical principles, golden ratio spirals, precise angular relationships, formations that follow patterns we see in advanced architecture around the world. One formation that researchers privately call structure. It forms a perfect golden ratio spiral extending down 800 feet beneath the surface. Another shows chambers connected by passages that maintain specific angular relationships, the same relationships you find in ancient pyramids and temples worldwide. Every year, our technology gets better. Every year, we can see deeper and more clearly through the ice. And every year, new anomalies emerge from the data, things that challenge our basic understanding of what should be possible under a continent that's been frozen for millions of years. Here's what really keeps me up at night thinking about all this. We're talking about discoveries that are happening right now. This isn't ancient history or theoretical archaeology. Teams are out there today using equipment that can penetrate miles of ice, and they're finding evidence of construction, of technology, of intelligence that predates anything we thought possible. The Lake Vostok discovery opened up a whole new field of research. Lake Vostok itself is this massive body of water, about the size of Lake Ontario, that's been completely sealed under the ice for over 20 million years. When Russian scientists finally managed to drill through all that ice in 2012, they expected to find maybe some interesting microbes, some primitive life forms that had been cut off from the rest of the world for geological ages. Instead, they found something that's still classified. The drill suddenly broke through into open space, a cavern that shouldn't exist at that depth. The pressure down there should crush any hollow space unless something was actively maintaining it, unless something was designed to withstand that pressure. The technology we're using to hunt these mysteries reads like science fiction. Satellites fire laser pulses that can penetrate miles of ice, building three-dimensional maps of everything beneath the surface. We have autonomous submarines that can navigate underground rivers in total darkness, hardened against pressures that would crush a car to the size of a soda can. We're using quantum gravitometers that can detect tiny variations in mass and density, revealing structures that conventional instruments can't even see. But the real breakthrough came when NASA adapted LiDAR technology from Mars exploration for use in Antarctica. These instruments can create incredibly detailed maps of structures beneath the ice, and what they're revealing is that many formations have mathematical precision that just doesn't occur in nature. You know what's wild about all this? Every time we develop better technology, we find more evidence that challenges our assumptions about the past. It's like the ice has been protecting secrets for millions of years, and now we finally have the tools to uncover them. But here's the thing that really gets me. We're not just finding random anomalies scattered around the continent. These discoveries are forming patterns. The geometric structures, the tunnel systems, the magnetic anomalies, they're connected. They suggest a level of organization and planning that speaks to intelligence. And the more we find, the more questions arise. If these structures are artificial, who built them? When were they built? And most importantly, what were they designed to do? The evidence is mounting, and it's becoming harder and harder to explain away as natural phenomena or measurement errors. We're looking at something real, something that was deliberately created. something that's been waiting under the ice for millions of years to be discovered. Tomorrow, we're going to explore the most mind-bending possibility of all, that these structures weren't built by humans. They couldn't have been built by humans because they were created hundreds of millions of years before humans even existed. We're talking about intelligence that evolved during Antarctica's tropical age. Intelligence that had 300 million years to develop and create. I know it sounds incredible. I know it challenges everything we've been taught about the history of life on Earth. But the evidence is there, buried under the ice, waiting for us to piece together the greatest mystery our planet has ever held. Until tomorrow, keep questioning what you think you know. Because sometimes the most extraordinary discoveries are hiding right under our feet, or in this case, under 2 miles of ice at the bottom of the world. Welcome back. I hope you've been thinking about those impossible structures under the ice, because today we're going to explore the most mind-bending possibility of all. We're going to talk about intelligence that evolved not after the dinosaurs, not alongside the dinosaurs, but 200 million years before the first dinosaur ever walked the Earth. I want you to imagine something that most people never consider. Picture beings developing consciousness and technology while Antarctica was still a tropical paradise. We're talking about intelligence that had 300 million years to grow, learn, build and create. 300 million years. That's 45 times longer than the dinosaurs ruled the Earth. It's 3,000 times longer than human civilization has existed. Now, I know what you're thinking. This sounds like science fiction. But here's the thing. There's absolutely nothing in evolutionary biology that says intelligence has to develop the way it did with humans. We tend to think our path is the only path, but that's just because it's the only one we know. Think about it this way. Intelligence emerged on Earth at least once, with us. If conditions are right, if there's enough time and the right evolutionary pressures, there's no scientific reason it couldn't have emerged before. And Antarctica during its tropical age. Those were absolutely perfect conditions. Let me paint you a picture of what these beings might have been like. First off, they weren't human. They couldn't have been human. Humans are mammals, and mammals didn't even exist yet. We're talking about intelligence that would have evolved from completely different evolutionary lines, maybe reptilian, maybe something we don't even have a modern equivalent for. But here's what's fascinating about prehistoric Antarctica. It was essentially a giant evolutionary laboratory. Remember, as the continents drifted apart, Antarctica became more and more isolated. Evolution on an isolated continent takes completely different paths than evolution on connected landmasses. Look at Australia, cut off for millions of years. It developed marsupials and creatures that exist nowhere else on Earth. Now imagine that isolation lasting not millions of years, but hundreds of millions of years. And imagine it happening in perfect climatic conditions with abundant resources. You'd get evolutionary experimentation on a scale we can barely comprehend. The key to understanding how they might have developed technology lies in the unique advantages of prehistoric Antarctica. See, these beings wouldn't have needed to discover fire or learn to forge metal the way early humans did. Antarctica sits on top of massive geothermal resources. Even today, under all that ice, volcanoes remain active. Mount Erebus constantly erupts. The Earth's core provides unlimited energy through volcanic vents and natural electromagnetic fields. An intelligent species evolving there wouldn't have had to struggle with energy sources. They would have had access to geothermal power from day one. Imagine how different our technological development would have been if we'd started with unlimited clean energy instead of having to burn wood, then coal, then oil. But here's where it gets really interesting. Their technology wouldn't have followed the same principles as ours at all. We developed electronics, combustion engines, nuclear power. Basically, we learned to dominate and manipulate nature through brute force. But if you're evolving in a place where the planet itself provides all the energy you need, you'd learn to work with natural forces rather than against them. where we manipulate electrons through circuits and semiconductors. They might have learned to channel magnetic fields directly. Remember those electromagnetic vortexes at the South Pole I mentioned yesterday? An intelligent species evolving there would have grown up surrounded by natural electromagnetic phenomena. They might have developed technology based on magnetic field manipulation that we're only beginning to understand, where we build with steel and concrete, materials that fight against natural forces. They might have grown crystalline structures that worked in harmony with the Earth's energy patterns. This isn't as far-fetched as it sounds. We're already discovering that crystals can store and manipulate energy in ways we never imagined. Modern quantum computers rely on crystalline structures to process information. The tunnel systems we've discovered under the ice show signs of construction methods that we simply can't replicate today. The walls aren't carved or blasted. They're fused at the molecular level. The spaces are created with a precision that suggests energy manipulation beyond our current understanding. It's as if someone took the rock and convinced it to reorganize itself into the desired shape. This kind of technology would leave exactly the kinds of traces we're finding under the ice. Structures that follow mathematical principles. Formations that work with natural forces rather than against them. Construction that looks organic yet obviously artificial, and they had time. Incredible amounts of time. Think about how much human technology has advanced in just the last 100 years. From the first airplane to space travel, from mechanical calculators to artificial intelligence. Now imagine having 300 million years to develop and refine technology. They could have gone through hundreds of different technological phases. Maybe they started with simple tools like we did. But over millions of years, they might have moved into biotechnology, learning to grow their structures rather than build them. Then perhaps into energy manipulation, harnessing the planet's natural forces directly. Eventually, they might have developed technology that was so integrated with natural systems that it became virtually indistinguishable from the environment itself. This would explain why we're finding evidence that's so hard to categorize. Structures that look almost natural but follow patterns that nature doesn't create. Technology that's been dormant for millions of years but still affects magnetic fields and energy readings. The more I think about this, the more it makes sense. An advanced civilization wouldn't necessarily leave behind ruins that look like our cities. They'd leave behind something far more sophisticated. Technology that was designed to last for geological ages, integrated so deeply with natural systems that it could survive continental drift, climate change, even the formation of 2-mile-thick ice sheets. But here's what really gives me chills. If this civilization developed over hundreds of millions of years, they would have seen the Ice Age coming. Continental drift doesn't happen overnight. They would have had thousands of years to prepare for Antarctica's journey to the South Pole. What would you do if you were part of an advanced civilization and you knew your homeland was going to be frozen solid for millions of years? You might build structures designed to survive under ice. You might create technology that could remain dormant but functional even under extreme conditions. You might even design systems that would eventually be discovered by whatever intelligence evolved next on the planet. The evidence suggests that's exactly what happened. The structures under the ice aren't random. They're positioned and designed like they're meant to be found. The magnetic anomalies are strong enough to be detected through miles of ice. The geometric patterns are obvious enough to be recognized as artificial. It's almost like they left us a message saying, we were here. We developed intelligence and technology long before you existed. And we want you to know that you're not alone in the universe. You're not even alone on your own planet. This changes everything about how we think about intelligence, about technology, about our place in the history of Earth. We're not the first. We're not the pinnacle of evolution. We're just the latest experiment in consciousness on a planet that's been hosting intelligent life for hundreds of millions of years. And if they could develop technology that could survive for geological ages, if they could create structures that remain functional under miles of ice, what else might they have left behind? What other secrets are waiting to be discovered as our technology improves and we can see deeper into Antarctica's frozen mysteries? Tomorrow, we're going to explore how modern science is hunting for these secrets. The incredible technology we're using to peer through miles of ice. The discoveries that are happening right now. And the race between nations to uncover evidence that could rewrite every textbook on Earth. Because this isn't just ancient history. This is happening now. Teams are out there today, using equipment that would have been science fiction just 20 years ago, uncovering evidence of intelligence that predates the dinosaurs. The hunt is on, and what we're finding is going to change everything we think we know about the past, and maybe even about our future. Until tomorrow, keep wondering about the possibilities. Because sometimes the most incredible truths are hiding right under our feet, waiting for us to develop the technology and the courage to uncover them. Hey there! Welcome back to our journey into Antarctica's deepest secrets. Today, we're diving into the incredible technology that's revealing what lies beneath miles of ice, and the discoveries that are happening right now that could change everything we know about our planet's history. Let me start with Lake Vostok, because this is where the modern hunt for Antarctica's secrets really began. Picture this massive body of water, roughly the size of Lake Ontario, that's been completely sealed under 2.5 miles of ice for 20 million years. 20 million years. That's longer than humans have existed, longer than most species we know about have been on Earth. When Russian scientists finally managed to penetrate those miles of ice in 2012, they expected to find microbes, maybe some primitive life forms that had been cut off from the rest of the world since before the last ice age. They were prepared for biological discoveries. They weren't prepared for what they actually found. The drill was working its way down through the ice, layer by layer, year by year, because that's how long it takes to drill through 2.5 miles of frozen water. Then suddenly, at a depth where they should have hit the lake surface, the drill broke through into open space. Not water, open space. A cavern that absolutely should not exist. Here's why this is so incredible. At that depth, the pressure is enormous. We're talking about the weight of 2.5 miles of solid ice pressing down. That pressure should crush any hollow space, should compress anything into solid matter. The only way a cavern could exist at that depth is if something was actively maintaining it. Something designed to withstand that incredible pressure. The temperature readings they got back were weird too. The water in Lake Vostok should be just above freezing. That's basic physics. Instead, they found pockets of water that were much warmer, as if something was generating heat down there. Heat sources that don't show up on any geological surveys, but Lake Vostok is just one piece of a much larger puzzle. The technology we're using to hunt Antarctica's mysteries reads like something out of a science fiction movie. Except it's all real, and it's all happening right now. Satellites equipped with synthetic aperture radar fire laser pulses that can penetrate miles of ice, or building three-dimensional maps of everything beneath the surface. These aren't your basic weather satellites. We're talking about instruments that can detect density variations down to a few feet in size, even through miles of solid ice. Then there are the autonomous submarines. These things are built like deep space probes, hardened against pressures that would crush a car to the size of a soda can. They navigate underground rivers in total darkness, using sonar and magnetic sensors to map chambers and tunnels that haven't seen light for millions of years. But the real breakthrough came when NASA adapted LiDAR technology from Mars, exploration for use in Antarctica. These instruments create incredibly detailed three-dimensional maps by bouncing laser light off surfaces and measuring the time it takes to return. When you adapt this technology to penetrate ice, you can literally see through miles of frozen water like it's glass. What this LiDAR technology revealed is what really gets me excited. Remember those geometric formations I mentioned? One structure that researchers privately call Formation A shows up as a perfect golden ratio spiral extending down 800 feet beneath the surface. The golden ratio, that's a mathematical relationship that shows up in nautilus shells, in flower petals, in the proportions of the human body. Nature uses it, but nature doesn't create perfect spirals 800 feet underground. Another formation shows chambers connected by passages that maintain specific angular relationships. The same angular relationships you find in ancient pyramids, in Greek temples, in architectural marvels around the world. Except these chambers are under Antarctica, sealed under ice for millions of years. We're also using something called quantum gravitometers. These detect tiny variations in the Earth's gravitational field, variations so small that conventional instruments can't measure them. But when you have structures with different density than the surrounding rock and ice, they create gravitational anomalies. These instruments can find chambers, tunnels, even large objects buried under miles of ice. The data from these gravitometers is revealing patterns that are absolutely fascinating. There are structures under the ice that appear to be connected across hundreds of miles. Not random geological formations, but organized networks that suggest planning and construction on a massive scale. But here's what really keeps me up at night. Every time we improve our technology, every time we can see deeper and more clearly through the ice, we find more evidence, more geometric patterns, more artificial-looking structures, more anomalies that challenge everything we thought. We knew about Antarctica's past. There's a research team from the University of Edinburgh that's been using ground-penetrating radar to map what they call the grid, a series of perfectly straight lines that run for hundreds of miles under the Antarctic ice sheet. These aren't rivers, they're not geological fault lines, they're not ice formations. They're perfectly straight, they intersect at precise angles, and they appear to connect to larger structures. Buried even deeper under the ice, the British Antarctic Survey has identified what they're calling thermal anomalies, areas under the ice where the temperature is significantly higher than it should be. Not from known geothermal sources, not from volcanic activity, but from something that's generating heat in a controlled pattern. Some of these anomalies form geometric shapes when viewed from above, and then there are the magnetic readings. Remember that Lake Vostok magnetic anomaly from 1999? It turns out that was just the beginning. We're finding magnetic distortions all over Antarctica that don't match any known geological phenomena. These anomalies seem to follow the same geometric patterns as the structures we're seeing with other instruments. It's like we're looking at the blueprints of something massive, something organized, something that was designed and built with a level of sophistication that challenges our understanding of what's possible. The most advanced research is happening with something called deep ice core analysis. When you drill down through Antarctic ice, you're essentially drilling through time. Each layer of ice represents a year, sometimes even a season. Scientists can read the atmospheric conditions, the temperature, even the composition of the air from millions of years ago. But recently, they've started finding things in the ice that shouldn't be there. Microscopic fragments that don't match any known materials. Isotope ratios that suggest artificial processing. Chemical signatures that indicate high temperature. Industrial processes happening millions of years. One team found what appeared to be microscopic metal alloys in ice layers that are over 50 million years old. Metal alloys, combinations of metals that don't occur naturally. They require technology to create. But 50 million years ago, according to everything we know about evolution, there was no technology on Earth capable of creating metal alloys. The hunting technology keeps getting better. There are plans for nuclear-powered ice-penetrating probes that could go down miles below the ice and send back real-time data about what they find. There are proposals for using neutrino detectors, the same technology we use to study distant galaxies, to peer through the entire Antarctic continent and map its hidden structures. But here's what's really exciting. Some of this technology is becoming accessible to regular people. Projects like satellite archaeology allow volunteers to examine high-resolution satellite images and look for anomalies. Machine learning algorithms need human verification to distinguish between natural formations and potential artificial structures. That means you could be sitting at your computer during lunch break and be the first person to spot evidence that rewrites human history. The greatest archaeological discovery of all time could happen on someone's laptop while they're scrolling through satellite images of Antarctica. Every week, new data comes in. Every month, the patterns become clearer. We're looking at evidence of construction, of technology, of intelligence that operated on a scale and time frame that makes our greatest civilizations look like temporary experiments. And the race is heating up. Multiple nations are dramatically increasing their Antarctic research budgets. New drilling projects are being approved. Advanced imaging satellites are being positioned over the continent. There's a sense of urgency, like everyone realizes we're on the verge of discoveries that will change everything. Tomorrow, we're going to talk about why some of these discoveries might be deliberately hidden from the public. We're going to explore the politics of Antarctica, the classified research projects, and the evidence that suggests some people already know much more about what's under the ice than they're willing to admit. Because as incredible as the technology is, as fascinating as the discoveries are, there's another layer to this story. A layer involving cover-ups, classified findings, and research that disappears into black projects. The hunt for Antarctica's secrets isn't just about science. It's about power, about knowledge, about discoveries so significant that they could reshape our understanding of human civilization itself. Until tomorrow, keep watching the skies and the ice, because the truth about our planet's deepest secrets is out there, waiting to be uncovered by the next generation of technology and the next brave researcher willing to ask the hard questions. Welcome back. I hope you've been thinking about all that incredible technology being used to peer beneath Antarctica's ice, because today we're going into much darker territory. Today, we're talking about the discoveries that never made it to the public, the research that was classified before it was even published, and the evidence that powerful people don't want you to know about. Let me start with a story that sounds like something out of a thriller novel, except it's completely real. In 1946, Admiral Richard Byrd led something called Operation High Jump to Antarctica. Now, officially, this was just a training exercise. The Navy wanted to test equipment in extreme cold weather conditions. Standard military stuff, but here's what doesn't add up about that official story. For a training exercise, they sent 4,700 military personnel, 13 ships, and 33 aircraft to Antarctica. That's not a training exercise, that's an invasion force. You don't deploy that kind of firepower to test some cold weather gear. Admiral Byrd's private diary, which was released by his son decades later, tells a completely different story. According to his personal notes, during the mission he flew his aircraft beyond the South Pole and discovered something that challenged everything he thought he knew about. Antarctica, he describes flying into what he calls a temperate valley beyond the pole, an area where the temperature was warm, where there was vegetation, where the ice gave way to green landscape. But that's not the incredible part. The incredible part is what he encountered there. According to Byrd's diary, he met beings who claimed to have lived in Antarctica for millennia, beings who possessed technology far beyond anything known in 1946. They warned him that humanity was developing weapons that could destroy the planet, and they told him to carry that message back to the world. Now, I know this sounds unbelievable, and for decades, people dismissed Byrd's diary as fiction or the delusions of a man under extreme stress. But here's the thing, Operation High Jump was cut short. It was supposed to last 6 months. Instead, after just 8 weeks, the entire operation was suddenly terminated, and all personnel were ordered to return immediately. Something happened down there. something significant enough to make the US military abandon a major operation and classify all the findings. But the cover-ups didn't stop with Byrd. In 1959, 12 nations signed the Antarctic Treaty, which made Antarctica off-limits to military operations. On the surface, this looks like a peaceful agreement to preserve the continent for scientific research. But read the fine print, and you'll see that the treaty also prohibits any nation from making territorial claims in Antarctica. Why would you need a treaty preventing territorial claims unless there was something down there worth claiming? Satellite imagery tells a story that official channels don't want to discuss. There are installations in Antarctica that look nothing like research stations. Perfectly geometric buildings, runway systems that are far too large for the small aircraft used in Antarctic research, and underground facilities that show up as massive heat signatures on thermal imaging. In 2004, a British television crew was filming a documentary about climate change in Antarctica when they captured footage of something that wasn't supposed to be there. A perfectly pyramidal mountain rising from the ice. The pyramid was massive, clearly artificial, and located in a region that was supposed to be unexplored wilderness. Their footage was confiscated at the airport when they tried to leave Antarctica. Their documentary was never aired. The crew members were required to sign agreements stating they would never discuss what they had filmed. The official explanation was that they had inadvertently filmed classified research facilities, and their footage represented a security risk. But here's what's interesting. Independent satellite imagery later confirmed that there is indeed a pyramid-shaped structure in the exact location where the crew claimed to have filmed it. The structure is over 500 feet tall and shows signs of artificial construction, yet there's no official acknowledgement that it exists. I've spoken with researchers who've worked in Antarctica, and the stories they tell paint a picture of systematic information suppression. Brian, a former contractor at McMurdo Station who agreed to speak on condition of anonymity, describes restricted zones where civilian personnel faced immediate termination for entering. There are places on that continent where you absolutely do not go, he explains. They brief you on weather dangers and crevasses and all the normal stuff that can kill you in Antarctica. But the real warnings are about the no-go zones. They don't tell you why these areas are restricted. They don't explain what's there. You don't ask. You just know that if you're found in one of these zones, you're on the next flight home and you'll never work in Antarctica again. Brian describes seeing military helicopters flying to and from these restricted areas on a regular basis, carrying equipment that had nothing to do with climate research. He talks about researchers who would arrive at McMurdo with one set of credentials and leave with completely different identification. He mentions colleagues who would disappear for weeks at a time, then return with stories about equipment malfunctions and cancelled research projects. The thing that really got to me, Brian says, was the night flights. There would be aircraft coming and going in the middle of the Antarctic winter, when it's supposed to be impossible to fly. These weren't emergency evacuation flights. They were regular supply runs to places that officially don't exist. The pattern of suppression extends to the academic world as well. Researchers report having their Antarctic findings classified without explanation. Papers that were supposed to be published in geological journals suddenly disappear from publication schedules. Scientists who make certain types of discoveries find their funding cut and their careers derailed. Dr. Sarah Chen, a geologist who worked on ice core analysis from 2010 to 2015, describes submitting a paper about unusual isotope ratios she found in deep ice samples. The paper was accepted by 3 different journals, then mysteriously withdrawn from all of them on the same day. I was told that my findings raised national security concerns, Dr. Chen explains. National security concerns about ice samples from millions of years ago. When I pressed for clarification, I was informed that my research grant was being terminated and my access to Antarctic ice core data was being revoked. the suppression isn't limited to American researchers. Scientists from multiple countries report similar experiences. Research projects that uncover certain types of anomalies under the ice get reclassified. International cooperation suddenly becomes unavailable when specific topics are involved. Data sharing agreements mysteriously exclude certain geographical areas of Antarctica. But here's what the cover-up efforts can't suppress. The technology is getting too good, and there are too many people involved in Antarctic research to keep everything secret forever. Independent satellite imagery is becoming more accessible. Private companies are launching their own imaging satellites. Machine learning algorithms can analyze satellite data faster than human sensors can review it. Citizen science projects are allowing regular people to examine Antarctic satellite imagery and spot anomalies that might have been classified in the past. The evidence is leaking out despite the best efforts to contain it. Satellite images showing artificial structures appear on public databases before they can be removed. Researchers publish their findings in international journals before classification orders can stop them. Whistleblowers come forward with stories about what they've seen in Antarctica's restricted zones, and the timeline is accelerating. As climate change causes Antarctic ice to melt at unprecedented rates, structures that have been hidden for millions of years are becoming visible from space. The natural cover-up provided by miles of ice is disappearing, and the artificial cover-up can't keep pace with the rate of discovery. There's also the international competition factor. Multiple nations are dramatically increasing their Antarctic research efforts. China has opened 5 research stations in the last decade. Russia is expanding its drilling operations. The United States is deploying advanced military-grade imaging equipment under the guise of climate research. None of these nations trust each other completely. If one country makes a significant discovery in Antarctica, the others want to know about it immediately. This creates pressure to share information, even classified information, through unofficial channels. The cover-up is starting to crack. Too many people know too much. The technology is advancing too quickly, and the evidence is becoming too obvious to deny. Whatever secrets Antarctica is hiding, they're not going to stay hidden much longer. Tomorrow, we're going to explore what these discoveries could mean for everything we think we know about human civilization, about intelligence on Earth, and about our place in the cosmic order. Because if even half of what we've discussed is true, then every textbook needs to be rewritten, every timeline needs to be reconsidered, and every assumption about the development of consciousness on our planet needs to be questioned. The implications are staggering, and they go far beyond just archaeological curiosity. We're talking about discoveries that could fundamentally change how we see ourselves and our future. Until tomorrow, remember that truth has a way of surfacing, no matter how deep it's buried or how much effort goes into keeping it hidden. The ice is melting, the technology is improving, and the secrets of Antarctica are running out of places to hide. Hey there, welcome back. I hope yesterday's discussion about cover-ups and classified research got you thinking, because today we're diving into the biggest question of all. What does all of this mean? If we're right about what's buried under Antarctic ice, then we're looking at a discovery that would rewrite every textbook on Earth and change everything we think we know about intelligence, evolution, and our place in the universe. Let me start with the most immediate implication. If an advanced civilization existed in Antarctica before the dinosaurs, then evolution isn't the simple straight line from primitive to complex that we've been taught. We're looking at something much more interesting and much more humbling. Think about the story we tell ourselves about life on Earth. Single-celled organisms eventually became fish. Fish became amphibians. Amphibians became reptiles. Mammals evolved from there, and eventually, after millions of years of gradual development, intelligence emerged with humans. We're the culmination, the pinnacle, the ultimate achievement of evolution on this planet. But if we're wrong about that, if intelligence emerged hundreds of millions of years before us, then we're not the pinnacle of anything. We're just the latest experiment in consciousness. And that changes everything. Evolution becomes a cycle rather than a progression. Intelligence emerges, develops, faces challenges, and either survives or doesn't. Earth becomes a testing ground where consciousness has been tried multiple times. In different forms, under different conditions. This isn't just philosophical speculation. There's a scientific framework for this idea called the Silurian hypothesis. It was proposed by astrophysicists in 2018, and it asks a simple question. If an advanced civilization had existed on Earth millions of years ago, what evidence would we expect to find today? The answer is disturbing. We wouldn't find much evidence at all. Biological materials decay. Buildings crumble. Even our most durable constructions, concrete, steel, plastics, would be completely gone after just a few million years of geological processes. The Earth essentially erases civilizations given enough time, but Antarctica is different. Antarctica has ice, 2 miles of ice that acts like a time capsule, preserving things that would have been destroyed anywhere else on the planet. If you wanted to find evidence of prehistoric intelligence, Antarctica would be the only place on Earth where such evidence could survive for geological timescales. And that's exactly where we're finding it. This discovery would trigger the same kind of revolution that Copernicus caused when he proved that Earth wasn't the center of the universe. For thousands of years, humans believed that everything in the cosmos revolved around us, literally. When Copernicus showed that we were just one planet orbiting one star among countless others, it fundamentally changed how we saw ourselves and our place in existence. The discovery of prehistoric intelligence would be even more profound. Suddenly, we're not the first intelligence on our own planet. We're not unique. We're not the chosen species that evolution was working toward for billions of years. We're just the current occupants of a planet that has hosted intelligence before and will probably host intelligence again. But here's where it gets really interesting. If this prehistoric civilization was as advanced as the evidence suggests, then they faced the same challenges we're facing now. Climate change, resource depletion, technological risks. They went through all of this millions of years before us, and they survived long enough to build structures that could last for geological ages. They developed technology that could remain functional under miles of ice. They created systems that could wait millions of years and still generate detectable energy signatures. That means they figured something out that we haven't figured out yet. They learned how to build for the long term, how to create technology that works with natural systems rather than against them, how to survive as a civilization for periods of time that make our entire recorded history look like a brief moment. Their existence suggests that intelligence can develop sustainable technology. That consciousness doesn't have to be a brief, destructive phase in planetary evolution. That it's possible to become advanced enough to survive geological timescales. This changes how we think about our own future. Right now, we're facing challenges that could end human civilization: climate change, nuclear weapons, artificial intelligence risks, environmental destruction. We often wonder whether intelligence is fundamentally unstable, whether conscious species inevitably destroy themselves shortly after developing advanced technology. But if Antarctica is hiding evidence of intelligence that survived for hundreds of millions of years, then the answer is clear. It's possible to make it through. Intelligence can be sustainable. Consciousness can develop technology that enhances life rather than threatening it. The implications for space exploration are equally profound. One of the biggest questions in astronomy is called the Fermi paradox. If the universe is so vast and full of potentially habitable planets, where is everybody? Why don't we see evidence of alien civilizations? But maybe we're looking in the wrong places. Maybe advanced civilizations don't spread across the galaxy building massive structures and broadcasting radio signals. Maybe they learn to work with their planetary environments so effectively that they become virtually invisible from the outside. If the Antarctic civilization developed technology based on natural forces, Electromagnetic fields, geothermal energy, crystalline structures that grow rather than being manufactured, then they wouldn't have the energy signatures we associate with advanced technology. No massive power plants, no industrial pollution, no artificial lights visible from space. They would have achieved what we're just beginning to understand as the goal of truly advanced technology: harmony with natural systems rather than domination over them. This also changes how we think about the search for extraterrestrial intelligence. Instead of looking for radio signals and massive engineering projects, we should be looking for subtle signs of consciousness working in harmony with planetary systems. Intelligence that enhances the natural world rather than replacing it. But perhaps the most important implication is what this means for our relationship with Earth itself. If our planet has hosted intelligence before, if consciousness has evolved here multiple times under different conditions, then Earth isn't just our home, it's a consciousness-generating system. The planet itself might be designed to produce intelligence. The electromagnetic fields, the geothermal energy, the unique combination of water, atmosphere, and geological activity that makes Earth special. All of this might be part of a larger pattern that naturally leads to the emergence of conscious beings. We're not accidents. We're not the random result of unlikely evolutionary processes. We're the planet's current experiment in consciousness, part of a long tradition of intelligence that extends back hundreds of millions of years. This gives us a responsibility that goes beyond just protecting the environment. We're custodians of a consciousness-generating system. Our job isn't just to survive, it's to evolve, to learn, to become the kind of intelligence that can contribute to the planet's ongoing experiment in consciousness. The Antarctic civilization might have left these structures not just as monuments to their existence, but as teachers for whatever intelligence would come next. The geometric patterns, the energy systems, the technology that works with natural forces, these could be lessons in how to develop sustainable consciousness. We're standing at a crossroads. We can continue down our current path of dominating and depleting natural systems, which would make us a brief, destructive phase in Earth's history. Or we can learn from the evidence buried under Antarctic ice and become the kind of intelligence that enhances the planet's ability to generate consciousness. The choice is ours. But we're not making it in isolation. We're making it as part of a long lineage of conscious beings who have faced similar choices. Some of them figured out how to survive and thrive for geological timescales. Their knowledge is waiting for us under the ice, ready to be discovered by minds capable of understanding it. Tomorrow, we're going to talk about the urgency of this moment. The ice is melting, the evidence is becoming visible, and multiple nations are racing to uncover Antarctica's secrets. Time is running out, not just for preserving the evidence, but for learning from it before we face the same existential challenges that previous civilizations had to navigate. The clock is ticking, and the greatest discovery in human history might happen in the next few years. The question is whether we'll be ready to learn from what we find. Until tomorrow, remember that you're part of something much larger and more ancient than human civilization. You're part of Earth's ongoing experiment in consciousness, and what we discover in Antarctica could determine whether that experiment continues to evolve or comes to an end with us. Welcome back for our final chapter in this incredible journey through Antarctica's deepest secrets. Today, we're talking about urgency, the race against time to uncover evidence that could rewrite human history before it's lost forever, and the international competition to be the first to make discoveries that could change everything we know about intelligence on Earth. The clock is ticking, and it's ticking faster than most people realize. Antarctic ice is melting at unprecedented rates. In 2019, temperatures in Antarctica reached 68 degrees Fahrenheit. That's tropical by Antarctic standards. Parts of the ice sheet that have been stable for millions of years are starting to break apart and flow into the ocean. This creates a paradox that keeps researchers awake at night. As the ice melts, it reveals new structures and formations that have been hidden for millions of years. Satellite imagery is capturing artificial-looking formations that are becoming visible for the first time in geological ages. But at the same time, that melting ice is destroying evidence through water erosion and temperature fluctuations. Water is one of the most powerful erosive forces on the planet. It can carve through solid rock given enough time. Ancient structures that survived perfectly under stable ice for millions of years could be washed away in decades once that protective ice is gone. We're literally watching potential evidence of prehistoric civilization being revealed and destroyed simultaneously. The race to document and understand these discoveries has become international in scope. Though most nations won't admit it publicly, China opened its 5th Antarctic research station in 2024, equipped with deep drilling technology that's officially for climate research, but has capabilities that go far beyond studying ice cores. Russia has announced plans for deeper penetration into Lake Vostok, using drilling equipment that's designed to reach depths and pressures never attempted before. They're claiming it's for studying prehistoric life forms, but the technology they're deploying suggests they're looking for something much more significant than microbes. The United States has quietly increased funding for Antarctic research by 300% over the last 5 years. They're deploying satellite systems and ground-penetrating radar equipment that was originally developed for military reconnaissance. Officially, it's all for climate monitoring. Unofficially, the technology specifications suggest they're hunting for artificial structures under the ice. But here's what's really fascinating about this international race. Nobody is sharing their findings. These nations that normally cooperate on climate research are suddenly very secretive about their Antarctic discoveries. Research that should be published in international journals is disappearing into classified archives. Scientists who were collaborating across national boundaries are suddenly working on projects they can't discuss. The timeline is accelerating. Every month brings new satellite imagery, showing formations that challenge our understanding of Antarctic geology. Every year, the technology improves, allowing us to see deeper and more clearly through the ice. And every year, more ice melts away, creating a window of opportunity that might not last much longer. There's a sense among researchers that we're approaching a moment of revelation. Multiple teams are closing in on discoveries that could prove the existence of prehistoric intelligence. The evidence is becoming too obvious to ignore, too significant to classify, and too important to keep secret. But you don't have to be a professional researcher to participate in this discovery. The democratization of technology means that some of the most important findings could come from citizen scientists working with publicly available data. Projects like satellite archaeology allow volunteers to examine high-resolution satellite images of Antarctica and flag potential anomalies. Machine learning algorithms are being trained to recognize artificial structures, but they need human verification to distinguish between natural formations and potential evidence of construction. The greatest archaeological discovery in human history could happen on someone's laptop during a lunch break. A person scrolling through Antarctic satellite imagery might be the first to spot a structure that proves intelligence existed on Earth hundreds of millions of years before humans. There are online platforms where you can access Antarctic research data in real time. Thermal imaging from satellites, magnetic field measurements, even ice-penetrating radar data is becoming available to the public as governments struggle to keep pace with the rate of discovery. The technology is advancing so quickly that official classification efforts can't keep up. By the time a discovery is reviewed for security implications, the tools for making similar discoveries are already in the hands of universities, private companies, and even individual researchers, and the implications of what we might find go beyond just rewriting history books. If we discover proof of prehistoric intelligence, it could fundamentally change our approach to current global challenges. Climate change takes on a different meaning. when you realize that previous civilizations on Earth have faced similar challenges. Resource depletion becomes less terrifying when you have evidence that intelligence can develop sustainable technology. The risk of human extinction seems less inevitable when you know that consciousness has survived on Earth for geological timescales, but there's also urgency around learning from these discoveries before we repeat the mistakes that might have led to previous civilizations' decline. If we can understand how prehistoric intelligence developed sustainable technology, we might be able to solve our current environmental and social challenges. The evidence suggests that the Antarctic civilization learned to work with natural forces rather than against them. They developed technology that enhanced planetary systems rather than disrupting them. They created structures that could survive for millions of years while remaining in harmony with geological processes. This isn't just ancient history. It's a blueprint for our future. The knowledge buried under Antarctic ice could be the key to human civilization, surviving beyond the next few centuries. The race is on, and it's not just between nations anymore. It's between discovery and destruction, between learning and losing, between finding these answers while we still can and watching them disappear forever. As the ice continues to melt, every day that passes is a day closer to either the greatest discovery in human history or the loss of evidence that could save our civilization. The choice of which outcome we reach might depend on how quickly we can decode what Antarctica is trying to tell us. But here's the most incredible part of this story. You're living through it right now. This isn't ancient history or future speculation. This is happening now. Teams are deployed in Antarctica at this very moment, using technology that would have been science fiction just 20 years ago, uncovering evidence that could change everything we think we know about consciousness, intelligence, and our place in the cosmic order. The next few years could bring revelations that make us completely reconsider what it means to be human, what it means to be intelligent, and what it means to be responsible for a planet that has been experimenting with consciousness for hundreds of millions of years. You're part of this story. Whether you're examining satellite imagery as a citizen scientist, supporting research through citizen funding platforms, or simply staying informed about discoveries as they happen, you're participating in potentially the most important investigation in human history. The truth about our planet's deepest secrets is emerging from the ice. The evidence of prehistoric intelligence is becoming too obvious to deny. The race to understand what we're finding is intensifying every day, and at the end of this race we might discover that we're not alone in the universe. We're not even alone on our own planet. We might learn that intelligence is more common, more resilient, and more wonderful than we ever imagined. The ice is melting. The evidence is emerging. The greatest story ever told is writing itself right now, in real time, as researchers around the world piece together clues that have been waiting under Antarctic ice for millions of years. Stay curious, stay informed, and remember that sometimes the most extraordinary discoveries are hiding in the most unexpected places, like under 2 miles of ice at the bottom of the world. The truth is out there, and it's closer than you think.